Hello, and welcome to this overview of new releases that I read that were published in May of 2024. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot. You're watching Random Olive Reads. Seducing the Duchess by Sarah Bennett is book one of the Disgraceful Duchesses series. Widowed Duchess Catherine gets stuck in an inn during a snowstorm and decides to take advantage of it by having a temporary affair with Sebastian. He's a Viscount on his way home to visit his estranged father. He has a scandalous reputation as a rake, which will come in handy for the comfort and satisfaction of Catherine. She had a terrible marriage and finally out of mourning, but there are stipulations in her late husband's will that keep her bound to the country estate. Although this is a very quick affair for Catherine and Sebastian, they fall pretty quickly into a more emotional relationship. Mistakes We Never Made by Hannah Brown is a contemporary standalone novel. We've got former friends in a complicated mess of a relationship in this book. Emma and Finn were on the high school debate team together, and they've had a bunch of missed connections, like a stood up date to junior prom, a random hookup after freshman year of college, some rooftop tryst in New York City, and then a screaming match at somebody else's wedding. They meet again at a mutual friend's wedding, and when the bride runs away, they team up to chase after her. So they're tracking her phone, and we've got a little bit of a road trip situation where they're stuck together for so many hours that they finally have to talk it out. But they're still both protecting themselves and protecting their feelings, not quite as direct as they should be. The Saloon Girls Only Shot by Danny Collins is a book two of the Quails Creek series. Temperance was ruined in her hometown of Chicago, and her stepmother throws her out. She and her father are headed to Denver to find a new position as a surveyor, but he gets injured and she's on her own. She's working at various saloon jobs until she keeps getting fired for reasons that are not her own. She meets a miner named Owen who feels a bit sorry for her and then decides that he's going to hire her to bookkeep at his saloon. Why he wants to open a saloon when there are already saloons in this town, we're not quite sure, but they start this semi physical relationship even though nobody is making any sort of commitments. Savor It by Tara DeWitt is a standalone contemporary romance. This is a small town where there are temporary neighbors and a little bit of fake dating. Everyone's got issues, but luckily everyone's closer to talking them through over the summer. Fisher is a chef who got fired from his last job, is basically flailing, and the newfound guardian of his orphaned niece. His boss ships him from New York City to small town Oregon to oversee the completion of a new restaurant. He is temporarily staying next door to Sage, who doesn't have much specific going on in her life except for dodging her ex boyfriend and preparing for the annual festival. We get a bunch of small town nosy hijinks here, which leads to Sage and Fisher fake dating and then actually falling in love. We have a whole cast of the small town characters here, which both makes things more funny and more emotional. Get ready for all sorts of emotional upheaval as their temporary relationship starts to wind down. My Fake Mistress by Olivia Fleur is a super quick and steamy standalone novella. Blythe is at her best friend's birthday house party and trying to avoid the intentions of a gentleman who wants to make her his mistress. She lies that she already has a protector and says that it's Julian, her best friend's father. When she tells Julian about the trouble, he decides to go along with it. And then, of course, they turn it into a true physical affair while she's there. The Heiress's Daughter by Anne Gracie is book three of the Brides of Bel Air Garden series, while the heiress Clarissa is tackling society on her own while her sister is on her honeymoon with her new husband, who also happens to be Clarissa's guardian. While they're away, he asks his best friend Race to take Clarissa out riding every so often, knowing that she likes it and no one else is competent. Clarissa thinks that Race is just spending time with her as an obligation to his friend, not knowing that he's courting her in earnest. We get to see these two spend more time together, and Clarissa showing an actual backbone and personality. It was also fun to see Race having to bend over backwards to convince Clarissa of his true intentions. All's Fair in Love and War by Virginia Heath is book one of the Miss Prentice's Protege series. There's lots of chaotic children here and a stern and serious guardian. Harry is a naval captain who is regimented and serious and very busy with his work, but his flighty sister has left her three young children and dog in his care while she and her husband go off adventuring to Egypt. He needs a governess quite desperately to control the overactive but lovable kids. Lucky for him, there's one available governess to hire who can start immediately. Georgie, up to this point, has been unemployable due to her outspoken nature and unconventional methods of teaching, but her mentor can smell the desperation coming off of Harry, so it's a perfect setup. The kids are totally rambunctious. They have no sense of structure whatsoever, so it's all sorts of chaos. Harry and Georgie obviously disagree on the methods of handling the kids, and Georgie assumes that Harry is rigid and heartless like her old stepfather, except for when she catches glimpses of him being wonderful with the kids. Harry is also trying his very best to focus on his career and not get distracted by the siren of a governess, but he's not terribly successful at it. It was loads of fun seeing him become a bumbling idiot around her. Devil of Mine by Ali Hudson is a prequel to the Most Imprudent Matches series. Now, this one straight up is a tragedy and tells the story of how Celine becomes a widow in a pretty short period of time. The author has said that we will get Celine's happily ever after story in a separate book. So in this one, Celine is known as a flirt and catches the attention of many gentlemen, including one scandalous Marquess Gabriel, who has his own reputation. They basically try and fail to stay away from each other until they end up married. We have a tiny bit of backstory for Gabriel and how he developed this reputation, but it's best not to get too invested in him since he doesn't make it. This was a pretty quick and straightforward, flirty, steamy read that adds more to the universe of this series. Love, Lies, and Cherry Pie by Jackie Lau is a contemporary standalone novel. We get a fake dating plot in this one. After her younger sister's wedding, Emily is the only unmarried daughter left and seemingly failing to meet her parents' expectations. After too much nagging about being set up with the oh so proper Mark, Emily asks Mark to agree to a fake dating scheme to ease up on the parental pressure. While they start off lying about going on dates, Emily's mother seems to know everyone in town, so they have to actually go on real fake dates. As they spend more time together, they realize that they do actually get along, but it seemed like it took too long for these two to be on page together, and Emily's mother was just like overly involved in her life. The Duke's Mysterious Lover by Caroline Lee is book 6 of the Surprise Duke series. This is the final book of the series where we finally catch the big bad villain that's been haunting all of the main characters along the way. Thorn is the only unmarried friend left, so he's taking on the burden of catching the villain while he doesn't have a wife or children relying on him. He does, however, have a very handsome young valet who he thinks is absolutely adorable. Kit is not actually a young man, but the daughter of a famous opera singer and some unknown nobleman working as a footman and then a valet so that she can get closer to the society where her father lives. She's just trying to catch a glimpse of her absentee father and make her own judgment about his character. Except that being promoted to Thorne's valet puts her in close proximity to a very attractive man who she is clearly tempted by. This book is a sweet sort of romance built on their personalities rather than their outward social appearance, and Thorne is absolutely thrilled to learn that Kit is a woman. And so we start their sort of physical affair, even though Kit realizes that she's not an ideal companion for a duke. We also get to reconvene with all of the other surprise dukes here as they plot the final showdown. When the Earl Desired Me by Lydia Lloyd is book 3 of the Rake Chronicles series. Augustus and Olivia had a secret relationship many years ago until she disappears out of the blue and leaves him heartbroken. Turns out she received a note from him dismissing her and asking her to leave. Clearly, he was not the one to have left this note, but doesn't change the fact that she had left the country for 13 years. She's back now as a ladies' companion, and these two have a chance to reconnect. Augustus is determined to never let her go again, and is absolutely serious in his intentions for her. It also turns out that his rakish reputation is not what it seems, and I love how he reveals all of this information to Olivia. This book is super steamy and sweet all at once. One Fine May by Courtney McCaskill is book 5 of the Rake Review series. Disappointed by Vander's exploits being featured in the latest gossip column, his father sets down the expectation that he needs to get married and start coming into work this month, or risk his inheritance being passed to his cousin. Upon his mother's suggestion, he asks his best friend's sister, Letty, for assistance. Except she's had a crush on him forever and is disappointed that he isn't actually proposing to her, but asking her to introduce him to suitable women. Meanwhile, she's juggling her own ill matched suitors and needs to decide between them soon. Clearly, Vander needs to open his eyes and realize that Letty is the perfect match for him, but it takes him a few days to get there. This book was light and fun and only a smidge of angst. The Prince's Bride by Charis Michaels is book 2 of the Hidden Royal series. Gabriel is a French prince who's been hiding away in a cave in the forest for the past 15 years and basically a hermit. He doesn't want to rescue a lady who he thinks might be a victim of highwaymen, but the screaming finally gets to him. Ryan is the daughter of an earl traipsing through the forest to find her long lost betrothed because the prince's horrible cousin has claimed the title and the betrothal for himself. Lucky for her, she stumbled right into the man she's looking for. Except Gabriel is not interested in reclaiming his identity or leaving the forest, which leaves Ryan right where she started. The plus side here is they're very attracted to each other, and Gabriel can't seem to stay away from her, even though he's sending her away. This was a lot of fun to read, especially as we slowly see Gabriel leave his comfort zone. Ruin Me by Midnight by Jenny B. Moore is book 4 of the Flower Sister series. Violet is trying to get out of a proposal to a man she does not want to marry, so she thinks that fake ruination will solve the problem. While she's at a house party, she makes a deal with Callum for a fake ruination that will leave him, the good guy, and her scandalous. Except that they're actually attracted to each other and never seem to get caught in all of the compromising situations they plan out. Both Violet and Callum are deeply broken by the events of their respective pasts that make them wary of any lasting connections. They've both got to overcome their own fears before being able to move on. Unladylike Rules of Attraction by Amita Murray is book 2 of the Marley Sister series. Anya and Damien meet under antagonistic terms when a dowager countess leaves Anya a great fortune that hinges on her marrying someone with Damien's approval as the trustee of the funds. Now, Anya has a scandalous reputation as the illegitimate daughter of an English lord and her current status as a court singer, but she's resolved to find a convenient husband to fulfill the terms. Except that the late dowager's family is scheming to get their hands on the funds, setting off a load of drama that puts Anya and Damien at huge amounts of risk. We get to see Anya and Damien start a physical relationship, even though they're both wary of any deeper emotional connection. The romance is fairly straightforward here, but the manipulations of the external villains are the driver of the story. The Gentleman Spy by Georgina North is a standalone historical. Beau is basically a deadbeat heir who has taken no interest in his estate or taking over when his father dies. After a delayed return, his family's pretty annoyed with him, especially the ward that his father had taken on and who has basically been running the estate the whole time. It doesn't help, Beau, that Emerald is a beautiful woman who's captured his attention, but he's her guardian, so she's pretty much off limits. They bicker and fight, and no one else knows that Bo is actually a spy and he's been absent because he's been serving the crown. It's more of a mess when Bo discovers that they're smuggling in town and somehow Emerald gets involved. It's basically a huge mess, but it was nice to see Bo and Emerald's relationship develop and how protective he becomes of her. Uncovering the Lord by Lexi Post is book one of the Courting a Curious Lady series. Lady Elspeth is more interested in rocks than gentlemen, but she's determined to find a husband this season so that her friends can continue to go to school. On her very last expedition to the Spanish caves, Elspeth runs into an old friend and rejected suitor, Teddy, who is now a single father and trying to convince his superstitious wet nurse to get on a ship back to England. These two end up reconnecting on that ship, and Elspeth is especially impressed by Teddy's newfound maturity. The problem here is that she had rejected him once before and thinks that she doesn't have a chance with him. Meanwhile, he's still in love with her after all of these years. It's clearly a perfect match between these two, and it's fun reading the slow build of their relationship. You Should Be So Lucky by Cat Sebastian is a historical that takes place in 1960s New York City. We have a slow burn forced proximity romance here with Mark, who's a newspaper reporter, being assigned to write about a baseball player, Eddie, who basically threw a big tantrum when he was forced to change baseball teams. They're both individually lost and lonely and stuck with each other. Mark has been grieving the death of his partner, who he basically had to keep secret for their entire relationship, and it's been a rough go of it. When he's assigned to write about Eddie, he's begrudgingly doing the job and also trying to find an angle to make the kid seem more sympathetic rather than the asshole that every other news reporter is portraying him as. Eddie's just shocked out of his comfortable situation where he lived in the Midwest, he got to play ball, see his mom every so often, and he knew exactly how to keep his private life private. Being in a new place that doesn't feel like home and where everyone is watching him fail at baseball is pretty awful for him. But Eddie and Mark start a tentative friendship, and it takes a lot of convincing on Eddie's part to get Mark to take a chance on him. I liked seeing Mark finally opening up about his previous partner and all of the difficulties there, plus seeing Eddie start to get along with his teammates. The Letters We Keep by Nisha Sharma is a contemporary new adult romance. Jesse and Ravi start off awkwardly, with her being ultra focused on school and him being the infamous son of a tech billionaire. They have a cute little rivalry where they fight over the same study room in the library, and they're also in the same writing class. Their friendship starts to turn around when they stumble upon some hidden letters in the library, which chronicle the secret relationship between two students in the 1970s who may or may not have been part of a legend that haunts the school. I liked seeing Jesse and Ravi bond over the letters that they find and realize their own feelings for each other. I also appreciated learning a lot about what happened to the mystery couple from the past, and it definitely kept me reading to find out more. This Marquess of Mine by Sylvie Sinclair is book two of the Romancing the Rogue series. For various family reasons, Griffin is stuck escorting his sister and her best friend to various events of the season. And Griffin is totally dreading it because he does not like Olivia. And by not like, I mean he doesn't like how he feels around her, which is attracted to her, despite him thinking that she's a shallow title hunting flirt. She has her own reasons for seeking a title, like impressing her disapproving father, but she covers it up by being the perfect society miss. As they spend more time together, they're really just bickering most of the time and totally clueless that the other person is pining for the other. I enjoyed reading about Griffin unwillingly lusting after Olivia, giving in to her requests, and finally getting a clue and getting it together. Seasonal Habits of Husbands and Honeybees by Emmeline Warden is book two of the Genus of Gentlemen series. We've got a marriage of convenience story here between Harrison, who's a heartbroken earl, and Phoebe, who just wants a clear and direct business arrangement. Phoebe would rather avoid all the anxiety filled social obligations of the marriage mart and stay home and tend to her bees. Harrison is pretty quick to catch on to Phoebe's desires and her idiosyncrasies and gives her pretty much everything she wants. He has his own hangups about rejection due to his upbringing and is very much a people pleaser. Lucky for him, it doesn't take much to impress Phoebe, especially when she realizes that he understands her better than anyone else in her life. This was a really charming, slow burn romance, and I enjoyed seeing these two get to know each other. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found a book or two to add to your TBR. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe to get updates, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.